Hi guys, my name is Minhajuddin Ansari and you're watching the 19th tutorial on C programming, and today we will be talking about pointers. So pointers are variables just like any other variable, but they hold on to addresses of other variables. So first let me draw my main memory, and I already talked about my main memory in my previous tutorial. So a main memory is simply, or the random access memory is simply a sequence of bytes, and each byte has its own address. For example, this might have address 100, this might have address 101, 102, and 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, and 111. So, we already talked about the importance of addressing in the main memory. So if your program wants to find where a variable is stored in the main memory, if it wants to access the value of a variable which is stored in the main memory, it should know where that variable is stored in the main memory. And in order to locate that variable, it has to know the address of that variable. Just like if people want to come to your house, they need to know the address of your house. Similarly, the program needs to know the address of a variable in order to access it, in order to use it. That is why addresses, each byte has its own address, and the pointer variable simply holds on or stores these addresses right here. So this is the purpose of a pointer variable. So let me first define an integer variable num, and I'm going to initialize it to the integer value 5. So you already know that the integer data type occupies 4 bytes in the main memory. So that means the integer variable num, this will get 4 bytes. So let me just give it 4 random bytes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 4 bytes are occupied by the variable num, and the integer value 5 is stored inside these 4 bytes. So the address of the variable num is always the address of the first byte. In fact, the address of any variable in the C language is always the address of the first byte occupied by that variable. That means when when the program wants to access the value of the variable num, it will try to locate the address 103 inside the main memory. So now, in order to store the address of the variable num, you need to define a pointer variable, and you can do so by writing int and the asterisk sign. The asterisk sign is needed to make sure you're defining a pointer, and you can name the pointer anything you want. I'm going to name mine ptr. And in order to store the address of the variable num, you have to write the address operator, which is simply the ampersand sign. And then you can write the name of your variable. So this would store the address 103 inside your pointer variable ptr. And this right here, the data type of the pointer, it simply means that the variable is going to be of type integer, whose address is going to be stored inside the pointer. So the pointer can hold the address of integer variables. That is why there's an int written right here. Similarly, if I had written a char star ptr asterisk ptr, this would store the address of a character variable. And the asterisk sign right here, this is needed. This is needed to tell the program that this variable right here is a pointer variable, because if I remove the asterisk sign from here, then the program will treat this variable as a normal character variable which will be holding characters. But since it holds the addresses of character variables, that's why you have to write the asterisk sign right here. So this is basically what pointers are, and pointers are also stored in the main memory. So for example, this pointer variable might be stored somewhere right here in the main memory, and pointer variables can occupy 2 bytes, 4 bytes, 8 bytes. For a 64-bit computer, it occupies 8 bytes. For a 32-bit computer, it occupies 4 bytes. So I'm simply going to, just for example, just for simplicity, I'm going to consider this pointer occupying 2 bytes. So pointers also occupy bytes, occupy space in the main memory, and inside this pointer variable, the address of the variable num would be stored. So 103 would be stored in these 2 bytes if the pointer occupies 2 bytes in the main memory. So this is the basic concept of pointer variables and how they can store addresses. And now I'm going to open my Visual Studio and I'm going to code it. So first I'm going to remove my previous tutorial from here. And so now what I'm going to do is that first I'm going to define my integer variable num. And I'm going to initialize it to the value 5, just like I did in the paint. And I'm going to also define my pointer variable ptr, and I'm going to initialize it to the address of my variable num. So now I can I'm going to print the address of the variable num is %p, and for address you need the %p format specifier. And now I'm simply going to add the pointer variable name ptr right here, and I'm going to end it as semicolon. So now when I run the program, I'm going to get the address of the variable num in my output screen, and this is the address right here, 00000cc 5F7E5634. And so this is the address of the integer variable num, and this is in hexadecimal notation. So hexadecimal notation is also an integer notation. Your integers can be represented in 4 different notations: decimal notation, which we are used to, binary notation, ones and zeros, octal notation, and hexadecimal notation. So be sure you check out the hexadecimal notation. So this is the address of the integer variable num. Similarly, I can define a character variable and I can name it, for example, alpha, and I'm going to initialize it to the character A. And this time I'm going to, since my pointer is going to store the address of a character variable, I'll have to change the data type to char, and I'm going to write the address operator on the character variable alpha. So now when I run the program, this will give me the address of the character variable alpha. So this is all it about pointers and variables. And just to recap, a pointer is simply a variable that stores the address of another variable. So if you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section, and thanks for watching this video.